So earlier this week, I asked you all, what are some questions you have always wanted to ask me? I got some really great questions, and so I'm going to respond to them all here today. And if you're wondering who I am, my name is Kalen. I'm the host of this channel. I'm an ecstatic spiritual coach, and I work with people around the world and learn to come home to themselves, be a more authentic, joyful, connected version of them. All right, so first question. Why did you start creating videos? Well, for me, beginning of the pandemic 2020, I stopped all my corporate coaching work. I was ready for it to end, and I had my mentors and advisors suggesting, hey, why don't you bring in your work as a coach and communicator with your background in acting and filmmaking, and also being a yoga and meditation teacher, and bring it all together and start helping people on their own journey of becoming and belonging and finding themselves. And right away was getting responses from people that these videos are meaningful to them and that it was something that was helping them in their lives. Where did I get my necklace? Well, you've seen me wear this in pretty much all my videos because I never take it off. And it was made for me. The stones were added at different times. In India, based on your astrology chart, they recommend you wear different stones to help balance your energy and mitigate some of your negative karma and bring in better influences into your life. So all the jewelry that I wear is astrological gemstones that help me improve my well-being, health, and happiness. So I first got this emerald in 2014, and then I started adding the other stones thereafter. Am I a top or am I a bottom? Well, I always imagined that I would be fully versed with my partner, but I typically am much more of a top. I identify much more as a service top, meaning I'm really focused on the other person's pleasure and happiness and joy. But with my husband, he can't bottom for me, so I've had to learn to explore that side of my sexuality. And I actually have been creating some videos on this topic. I have one out, another one coming, so you can click that link to check it out if you would like. But it has taken a lot of work for me to start to get over some of the judgments I've had around being a bottom and bottoming more often, because I think that we as a society judge those people as being less valuable or less masculine, and I've had to work through some of my own internal shame and judgment around enjoying that experience. How long do I work out every day? Well, I go to the gym pretty much 7 days a week. I usually do stretching first, 10 minutes. On a more rest day, that might be up to an hour. I do lift weights most days. I've been doing 7 days a week for several months now, probably like 8-10 months, but I'm finding that that's too much. So I'm going to try and cut down back to like 5 days a week of weight training because my body's just constantly fatigued now. And then I try to do a 20-minute session of cardio on a Peloton or on an elliptical, and then I also do a lot of walking throughout the day. I walk my dogs twice a day, usually for an hour in the morning and an hour at night, so I get a lot of exercise in. What's the craziest thing I've done in the name of love? Oh, I would imagine that probably would be proposing to my now husband, basically, on our first date. I have a whole story about how we met, so if you want to check that out, you can, but I fell in love with him before we met in person, and on our first date, I brought him a postcard saying, I am going to marry you one day. Am I ticklish? Yes, very, and I don't like to be tickled, so please don't do it. What painters and or music inspire you? Well, as far as music goes, I really love choral music, calming music, world music, and so I have a playlist that I created on Apple Music that I listen to pretty much every day, and it has a group called Voces 8, Voce, I don't know how you say it. A lot of their music I really, really love. I like the piano guys. I love some movie soundtracks. I find some cinematic music to be really beautiful. As far as pop music goes, I'm a huge Swiftie. She's probably the only pop singer who I know their entire catalog front and back, so I'll often listen to her when I'm working out at the gym. As far as painters go, I really love all forms of art. We live in DC, so I have the great benefit of having all these museums nearby, and so I really try to take advantage of that and go to museums whenever I can, because I think visual art is absolutely stunning. I also do painting. It's something that I don't do a ton of, I'd like to do more of, but I find expressing myself visually to be something really meaningful. What do I enjoy most about being a man? Oh, I'm gonna start off by saying, I was gonna originally say penis, but I think I'm actually gonna go with privilege. Like, the amount of privilege you have for being a man, of like not having to be afraid walking down the street, not feeling like you're going to have your space threatened, feeling like people give you authority and don't question your judgment, and that you don't have to worry as much about, what am I wearing? How do I look? Did someone see me wearing this outfit before? Did I do my hair before I go outside? Like, all of the societal pressure that we don't have. I'm sorry, but men have it so much fucking easier, and I'm really very aware of that privilege and thankful for that. I wish everybody got to experience it. Not experience being man, but experience not having all that pressure of societal expectations and having the freedom that men have. Do I enjoy edging? Yes and no. No, in the sense that I'm not a huge fan of pornography. I don't consume much of it. I don't find it to make me feel good most of the time. Sometimes I enjoy it, but Generally not, and that's how most people edge. I do enjoy the experience of multiple orgasms and getting to the edge and backing off and having non-ejaculatory orgasms, which I guess some people would consider edging. It's something that I talk a lot about on my OnlyFans, and it's something I'll probably be doing more videos on here about. But that's an experience I really do like. How did I start doing what I do? Well, I already touched on this briefly, but I'll go into that in a little bit greater depth. When I was in college, I started getting into yoga and meditation, and I ended up moving into an ashram for 7 years after doing my yoga and meditation teacher training. And while I was living at the ashram, I also worked as a professional actor in Chicago. And so I would be in meditation class, be doing selfless service, then leave the ashram to go to auditions and movie shoots and work at the theater. And when I wasn't at the theater, I was supposed to be back doing projects and meditating. And so that combination of spiritual work, but also communicating and storytelling and performance was already a very integral part of my life. When I left acting and left that community, I moved into corporate coaching work where I was teaching empathy trainings, communication skills, leadership trainings, and that all ended with the pandemic, and I was ready to see it go because I was not enjoying working in a corporate environment. I mean, you guys know me, I like to be naked, I like to talk about sex, I like to be authentic, and you can't do that in those spaces. So for me, it was a really great blessing to be able to start bringing all of that stuff together and do here now what I do with you all. How do I feel about straight women following me? Awesome, great. You're all welcome here. When I started this channel, I really was focusing my audience on being like gay men. Those are my people. That's who I want to talk to. But as I've moved forward, I've really tried to open up and expand who my audience is and realize that just because my experience is being a predominantly same-sex attracted cisgendered male doesn't mean that what I have doesn't have value to other people. So if you're gender nonconforming, cisgendered woman, straight, queer, bi, whatever you are welcome here, and I love you, and I'm thrilled to share this space with you. And if you're a straight woman and you're turned on by my videos, all the better. Cool. I'm glad I do it for you. Whatever makes you happy is a good thing. How do you find a serious relationship as a gay man? I think this one's a really hard one because a lot of gay men might even say they want a serious relationship but just haven't done the work of healing themselves to be ready for that. And so they come with a lot of baggage and a lot of mixed messaging, and we're all wounded. We've all come from really difficult experiences as we were growing our identity because we were all outcasts. Even if you were in a very affirming household, before you knew you were queer or gay or gender non-conforming, you knew you were different, and different was scary. And so growing up as a queer person is an inherently traumatic experience. And unless you've done that healing work, it's going to be very hard to be in a relationship with you. So finding a lifelong partner as a queer person, I think, is a really big challenge. But there are good people out there. There are people who are doing the work. And I think as long as you keep working to improve you and improve your own vibration and keep leveling up internally, you'll be attracting more and more quality people. Because we attract people who are in a similar resonance as ourselves. If someone's way ahead of you or way behind you, they're not going to be interested. You're not going to be interested in them. So if you can level up, you'll be attracting more and more people who can meet you in that place and have the potential for finding love. That's a good one. My thoughts about veganism and vegetarianism in regards to spirituality. Okay, so full disclosure, I was vegetarian for 7 years and vegan for about 9 months during those 7 years. And I will fully admit, I think that meditation is so much easier, emotional regulation is so much easier when you're not consuming animal products, especially animal products where the animals have not been treated well and they've had a lot of really negative emotions in their body. I do think the way that we produce food in this country and treat animals is absolutely deplorable. And at the same time, I also acknowledge that you have to get your needs met and you need to be healthy. For me, I was getting sick all the time as vegetarian, and my doctor was like, you need to start eating meat again. And when I did, I started feeling so much better. I don't think everybody's the same. I think everybody has to find out what works for them. And I'll also just add on a purely, I call it ego-driven or materialistic level, like I want to look a certain way, and it's very hard to develop muscle as a vegetarian or vegan. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is much more difficult, especially if you're not somebody who's inclined to be muscular. And for me, having a body that makes me feel good, that when I look in the mirror, I'm proud of what I see, is something that matters to me. And so I try to eat ethically sourced meats as much as I can. I always thank the animals that gave their life so I can live. But if you want to be real, a true sattvic diet, a true diet that means you've caused no suffering to anyone, means that you only eat plants that have offered themselves to you. Fruit that has fallen from the tree or the bush, vegetables that have fallen from a vine, root vegetables that have pushed themselves up from the ground, and milk from a cow whose calf has already drunk their fill. That's considered a sattvic way of eating where you're doing no harm, but that way of eating is pretty much impossible. So that's not the world we live in right now. Maybe one day in the future it will be, but we make the best choices that we can with what we're given. And I've had people cut themselves off from me because they refuse to be vegan, but it's just, that's not where I'm at right now. How did I meet my partner? Well, there's a whole video on that topic, so I recommend checking it out. But we met through OkCupid, which I don't think is still as much of a thing, but circa 2015 it very much was. It was like that nice middle ground between Grindr and Tinder and Match.com, where people are looking for relationships, but they're not also like, I need a relationship. And so we met there the week that he moved from Los Angeles to Chicago. I was like the third profile he saw. He's like, this is the guy, this is who I'm looking for. I saw him and just saw this glowing ball of light, and I was traveling, so I had a whole week to get to know him virtually before we met in person, and I fell in love with him that week. He is the most amazing person I've ever met. I still think he's the most amazing person. I think he's wildly attractive, and he turns me on physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, every way, and I couldn't imagine myself being luckier. What's one thing I always remember in my heart? To try and see the divinity of people. To see that everybody is doing the best they can with what they've been given, that they're all hurting, and that they're all doing what they think is right. And that each one of us, whether I think they're being reprehensible or even evil in their behavior or not, is still an aspect of the divine, and to treat them with love and compassion as best as I'm able, and to realize I'm going to fail, but to try and do my best to recognize that as often as I can. What's the deal with my upcoming retreats, and are they going to be nudist? So I'm planning retreats for 2024. We're looking at India and Nepal. We're looking at Tuscany. We're looking at Mexico. We're really trying to find some really cool spaces, so it's not just about our retreat, but having a cultural experience, seeing sacred places. Some of those will have clothing optional elements. I'm not sure if any of them will be fully nudist. It depends on the venue and what they're willing to accommodate, but I love nudism. I think it's a great way to break through barriers and to create social bonds, but it just depends on what the host spaces are comfortable accommodating. And if you want to stay up to date on retreats, please go to ecstaticself.com and sign up for my mailing list so you're sure to know about when those things become available to sign up for. Someone asked, how did I get so handsome? Well, believe it or not, I did not know anyone thought that of me. I didn't get my first kiss till I was 25, and I didn't necessarily know anybody thought I was that attractive. I will say I do think I've gotten better looking as I've gotten older. Part of that, a big part of that, is I really do believe that over time, our inner light starts to affect our body and start to affect our face. And that Angelica Houston says, and I think it's true, we all end up with the faces we deserve. That inner light shines out. And I really think so much of attractiveness is not just the bone structure of your face, but also how we hold it and how we hold the physical bodies and the physical space we've been given. I was joking with a friend of mine that when I was in theater school, I had this horrible acting teacher who taught me things that were actually damaging to my career. And one of the things she taught us is that you should always walk into a room and start a scene with neutral face. And neutral face was allowing everything to just relax, so that you should walk into the room like this. Yes, and breathing through your mouth so you were more able to respond. If I walked around like that, people would not think I was very attractive. How I smile with my eyes, how I hold myself as part of that. And thinking kind thoughts, thinking thoughts of love, I think really makes a big difference in somebody's appearance. Are both me and Anthony tops? Me and my husband. Yes, we are both tops. As my husband says, he's like, I like to date tops who will be willing to bottom for me, but that energy of somebody who's a top I find really attractive. Here's a fun one. How much did my pecs cost? My husband would like to buy some pecs and a bigger butt too. Well, thank you for thinking that I have pec implants, but I do not. That would be interesting. I have looked those up. I don't know if those are something that would ever work for me, but it's not something I have paid for. So I cannot answer that question, but thank you for it. It is an interesting one. How did it feel the first time I aligned my chakras? That's a really interesting question. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I've been meditating since I was 20 years old. I have no idea what people mean when they say my chakras are aligned or not aligned. Like, I don't have that experience myself. I don't have that experience with other people. Like, I can sense blocks in me. I can sense energetic blocks in other people. Like, I don't see like, oh, your chakras, like this one's to the left or this one's closed and that one's open. Like, that's very rarely an experience I have. I just sense more of, we have areas where we're flowing and more expansive, and then we have areas that are more constricted and more blocks. But yeah, that's not something I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. I'll also just say, I think all of us have our own version of how we perceive spiritual energy. I'm somebody who's very kinesthetic, like I feel things. But I know people are very visual, like they see colors or they see shapes. Some people are auditory. Everyone has a different way of perceiving things, and so for me, that's just not my gift. Someone asked a very long question, basically summarizes down to, my partner's dealing with grief around his mother's passing. He's not getting over it, but he's meditating regularly. Is his meditation practice not helping him? I think this is a really difficult question because we as a culture have this interesting idea of grief. If you look at the DSM, the textbook that therapists use to diagnose people, over the decades, the amount of time that's considered appropriate for somebody to grieve has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. I think it's down to like 2 months now, or it might be even just a number of weeks. And it used to be longer. It used to be like 6 months or a year. And if you're grieving longer than that, then they're considering it being clinical depression. I think this is really challenging because grief is not something you just get over. It's something that affects you permanently and you will carry with you for the rest of your life. And it takes a long time to process that through. There's a really wonderful book, I recommend this to a lot of my clients, called Lost Connections by Johann Hari, and he has some beautiful observations about the process of grieving. I also really recommend this TED Talk called We Don't Move On from Grief, We Move Forward with It. So those are 2 really good resources for you and your partner to check out. When did I start wearing kilts and are they comfortable? You know, I have loved kilts for a long time. I first started getting into them in my early 20s, but people shamed me around them and said they're not attractive. I think they're so comfortable. I think they're so freeing and fun. I think all men should be wearing them, but they are difficult to wear in certain settings. Like I live in Washington, D.C., and Washington, D.C. is not creative or liberal in how they dress. Like everyone wears these horribly boxy, ill-cut suits from like the 1980s. And so it's really not a place that feels comfortable or appropriate to wear kilts. I would love to wear them more often, but it just feels like I don't live in a space where they're celebrated. But if I could, I probably would wear kilts every day, except when I'm at the gym because of obviously privacy issues. Although if I lived in a place where, you know, it was totally cool to wear a kilt in a gym, I would be totally down for it. But people seem to be very protective over nudity and bodies, and I don't want to see that, which is, I think, odd. It's not healthy. So if kilts interest you, I'd say give it a go. I think they're so much fun, and one of my goals is to live a place where I can wear them full time and it's accepted. How often do I have sex? Well, let's define sex. Do we mean penetration? Do we mean mutual masturbation? Do we mean sex with oneself? Pretty much every day, some assortment of those. Me and my husband have what we like to call it sexy time daily. If we're on vacation, it's usually multiple times a day. Whether or not that involves penetration varies. And I love to have alone time with myself. So it's something that is pretty present in my life. What turns me on? Oh, I love this question. I think people ask for like something visual, right? Like, oh, I love big pecs, or I love blah, 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 blah. But for me, I have kind of learned as I've gotten older that a person's body doesn't necessarily make them sexy. Like, don't get me wrong, a beautiful body will definitely make me look. But I've just seen too many times with somebody with a beautiful body is not attractive. That their energy is just really off-putting, their spirit is not beautiful. And so what I think makes somebody attractive is their kindness, their open heart, their ability to be vulnerable, their ability to connect, their willingness to share something meaningful, to approach intimacy as something sacred and healing. And if somebody's willing to open up to that, that's really sexy. And I will say I have developed feelings and developed attraction for people who physically were definitely not my type, but the character that they had and the person that they were inside made them absolutely beautiful and alluring to me. All right, that's it. I think I got to all the questions you guys posed. Thank you so much for wanting to get to know a little bit more about me. I hope this was fun for you. It was fun for me. And if ever you have any questions or suggestions for videos or topics or meditations, do not hesitate to reach out and let me know. I'm Kaylin. This is Ecstatic Self. Blessings and love to you all. Bye.